do encourage conversation and discussion. So, you know, please feel free. The only thing I ask is that no one speak over each other, and that once we get into the topic for today, that we stay on topic. Of course, public comments is whatever you would like to have public comments about, but once we get to the topic, if we could stay, you know, generally around that topic, that would be great. Okay? First thing we need to do then is to approve the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? I second. All in favor? We have several meetings minutes to approve, and we are all in agreement that we're going to do it as a batch motion. So do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of July 3rd, July 24th, July 30th, and August 8th?
I move that we approve those minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. All right, great. So let's go to our public comments. Amanda?
I always feel like I have to stand. I really don't.
You
But
really
I feel like I do. It keeps me on track.
You got a teacher voice.
Yeah, I do have a teacher voice. So first I wanted to actually just to say welcome to all our new staff, because it's amazing. We have all these new faces, and we're looking forward to a really, really fresh start. So that's excellent. Secondly, that I wanted to mention that I already know Ms. White. I have not met you officially, but I did meet with your team on Friday of last week, impromptu, like just I came in to ask a question and ended up talking to them, and they told me so many great things about changes you've made for consistency in our SPED department and streamlining that, and I was really excited to hear that. I even mentioned it to Dr. Rodriguez. But moving forward, there are some things that are loose items that we've talked about a couple of times. The youth apprenticeship program, we haven't talked about it in quite a while, but I did bring it up in association with Kate. The state did approve a youth apprenticeship program system for the state of South Carolina, and we are supposed to have a coordinator for that. I know that some of our students do take part in Kate, and they do have work apprenticeships already. I'm not sure how that's operating. Today I was alerted to a problem by a parent that her daughter was not allowed to leave campus after her classes in the morning to go to her Kate job. And so there's some kind of problem. I know she's been working with district. I suggested who to call to, and I'm hopeful they'll work that out. But going forward, there is, I don't know if any of our board members know or any of our new district people know, but there is a consultant, an apprenticeship consultant from the state group. I wanted to give you all his information so that it could get to whoever it needed to get to in order for this to be moving forward. The second piece to that is one of our great past teachers now works for a company called Tallo, and I didn't know if any of you knew what that was. It's T-A-L-L-O, and it is a free like database app that our students can join, that they can put all their information in there, whether it be academic, whether it's work experience, whether it's Kate experience, whatever it may be. And it links them to corporations in our state and in our local community as well. Currently, only 154 students in Beaufort County are using it, and they're using it mostly through like HOSA or the Future Business Leaders of America, those kids. But this is an untapped resource. It's absolutely free to the district. They even come out and train you. They will train the counseling staff to get kids onboarded. And what this does is it allows people in the workforce community to find these kids, to offer them summer research projects, summer internships, and also scholarship money, which is huge. So I wanted to make sure you were aware of that. I was going to mention it to Dr. Rodriguez as well. I have the information here, and I have her contact information for you as well. I would highly recommend that we speak with her, because I think this is an untapped source, and all of the upstate, Horry, they're all using it. So it's free to us.
Is the website, is it like tallo.com or something? Or
it's just, yes, it's yes, and everything's on here. It's tallo.com. That's exactly what it is. TALLO.com, yes. So I wanted to give you that. My other statement, which I'm sure there's another mom who's going to speak to, is really working on the ABAs in our school. We're off to another year. We need to get this problem solved. So that's it. Thanks. Can I give those to you or Robin or?
I'll take it for now, and then I'll
Okay.
coordinate with Robin. And
There's an email to me somewhere in that stack and it has the contact information for Emily Todd, who's
All right.
the Tallow rep.
Thank you.
Assistive behavior.
Kanan?
Hello everyone,
Hello.
welcome back to this area.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Dr. White, thank you. This is my third meeting for SPED. I'm still here pleading for ABA in school. We cannot talk about academics or progress for academics for special need kids unless we talk about therapy that help them reach deep progress. Again, we begging. I don't know what door we're gonna knock next. I don't know what email I'm gonna email, who I'm gonna email next, but we need ABA therapy. It's the only thing scientifically, up to now, as we speak, and proven to work for these kids. They function better. It's not an after-school activity. It is a survival mode for them. It is something that we just allow them to be, as all of us, highly functioning. They're not highly functioning. We can get them there, but we cannot, with due respect, I love this district, I love Beaufort County District, but we need to start caring about these special need kids. We cannot just care about what scholarship will get us, what program will get us. They are kids, and I'm not gonna sit and enjoy a view, wait till my kid reach 18 years old so I can enroll him in PEP. It's not gonna happen. Me, along with other moms, I cannot plead for everybody. I'm here pleading for mine. I have 11 and 9, my 7, he didn't choose the path, but we can all embrace it. If we can, if we as parents, we can, you all can help us. If you understand how, why, what we can do, what we cannot do, please help us. We are pleading you. I missed one meeting, I was out of the country. This is my third meeting, and there'll be another meeting. I will do whatever it takes. I had to get a sitter for 3 kids. Could care less, but I want to meet each and every one of you. There's a lot of numbers. The number is climbing. There's a lot of kids that needs and scream your help. If they are screaming, when they act in stores, they are looked at as brats. Excuse my language. These kids, they're not brats. They wouldn't do anything better if they knew better. The only thing that works, again, it is ABA therapy, applied behavior analysis. And thank you so much.
So I can share just a little bit for the short time that I've been here as a district. We do work right now currently with 2 contract ABAs, PCBAs. We also have one of our employees who is now a coordinator, Juliet Ewing, that next year would be a board certified behavior therapist as well. We're currently working on looking at some RBTs, those are the behavior therapists that works under the supervision. We're actually in discussion. I have a proposal already done to submit to Dr. Stratos, who is the Chief Officer for Academic Affairs, to allow us to hire internally 2 RBTs and train them in the interim, because Juliet will be able to supervise that. Our goal is to train all individuals in the methodology as well, so that if your student matriculates and even go to other teachers, they will be trained in the best practices of ABA principles in order to meet their needs. So we are aware, and we've got some plans in the works to do that. The challenge then will be finding the personnel, which we continue to do that. So I'll probably be presenting that proposal to Dr. Stratos next week about those 2, one for the Beaufort area and then we will continue to grow while working. We also are working on a plan to have a very good professional development opportunities for our paraprofessionals, many of them who are one-on-ones with those, to make sure that they're truly trained. We're getting ready to purchase licenses for online RBT ABA program that we use to train them. So we are working and we're getting there. So we could speak a little bit more about some additional plans as we continue to make progress. We can update the committee on where we are with that, please.
Can I just ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Julie was Ewing was previously the autism coordinator. I know she's still wearing both hats. Is there any?
So she is the coordinator now for Special Ed, whose primary area of focus is students with autism, and we are still going to advertise for our autism manager. One of the things when that position was first advertised, it stayed vacant for about 3 years because of the requirements of having a BCBA. So we need to look at those requirements and see how we can fill that and still get the expertise that we need. But yes, so her focus is still.
We had her, was the resource coordinator a promotion, is that why we moved her to that spot?
The coordinator position for her was a promotion, but also it also allowed me with her expertise to really promote how we support schools. So even though she's not, the autism, it did not take away from what her responsibilities are. She's still supporting all the schools with that and still working. She's sitting through the meetings. She
Yeah, I know she's doing that, that's why I was saying, and she
Right.
also, in some cases, was giving direct
Direct.
ABA. And so
Yes.
that's what my concern is, if she's now gonna be a coordinator and she's going to all these schools, elementary level, is she gonna have time to meet those?
Yeah, so we
demand.
have time, and that's why we're going with also training the RBTs that we have, and also looking at getting some assistance from the two contract BCBAs that we're.
Okay, you're gonna use the contract.
I want to reassure people that we're not losing the integrity of the program, we're strengthening and continuing to do what we're doing, so yeah, not losing.
Okay, thank you.
My background is a speech language pathologist, and I work primarily with students with autism as an early interventionist for many years, and so that is really a passion of myself, and I'm very ABA trained and very grounded in that methodology, and really training all professionals in the room, so you can't say, as a parent, you can be reassured if you go from this school to that school and you go in this teacher's class, this teacher's classroom, they all will be training that methodology to me. And then the kids that need more intense services and discrete trials, then we set up that program and monitor as well. So I'm going to ask the consultant to come in and evaluate our program where we are and make recommendations for us as well.
Quick
That's
question.
necessary.
Quick question, the 101. My son has a 101. She's not trained, she doesn't do she didn't do the 40 hours RBT. She's not an RBT. What are the chances to get her to, because I don't want just somebody to babysit him, I want somebody that has knowledge.
Juliet just sent me a text message that we need more licenses. I already contacted the company and said I need some additional licenses for my parents to be trained.
All
And
right.
we're gonna give them a very short time window to make sure that they get that training that they have along with our support. So
Yes, thank you.
Before we continue on with the TSI schools and the MOAs, I was hoping that perhaps our new staff members to the district would introduce themselves to everybody. Okay, so Dr. White, you've already just spoken a little bit, so is there anything more you want to add about what's your position title? What is your exact title? And
So I'm the Director of Special Education, coming to the district with 10 years previously as a Special Education Director in 2 different school districts, and the last one as an Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction. I like to tell people that I do understand the plight. I am a parent of a student with a physical disability and a 504 plan, so I definitely get the parent perspective. And just have a strong passion for students and making sure that we meet their needs as well. So I'm excited to be in Beaufort County.
Welcome. We're very
Welcome.
excited.
We're very excited to have you.
Very excited to have you.
Yeah?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Dr. Mary Stratos. I'm your new Chief Instructional Services. Young lady right next to me works for me and with me, and we actually had many of the conversations that you're putting out to the table this morning. I'm 48 hours into this, and we're already having conversations regarding the needs of training of our parents, going forward and extending the services for our children with special needs. So you bridge on something that's very important and passionate, that actually get each of us here at this table, because sometimes our children with special needs are overlooked, and part of the conversation is how do we integrate this program into as an intervention for disciplinary practices as well. So we're coming to the table with a few ideas, looking not to spend, but looking at what we have and how we can make it better. Because as I shared last night, ultimately the goal is working with children and making it better for our kids. So I have to share that with you. Especially, we try to look at things as a parent. And I shared, I don't have children, and maybe that's why I'm a little more about it, because I take it as an honor that you lend your children to us. And I have to say that to you. And that's always been a lens that I've utilized with the families that I've worked with. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
My name is Denise Matson, and I'm here as a representative from the Finance Department. I am the new Title I coordinator, and so any kind of grants and things that's where I support the campuses in.
And we so appreciate you all being here because today's topic has to do with our 6 TSI schools and the memorandums of agreement that are associated with the TSI schools. I only received 2 of these. Is there anyone else that did not fill one out that would just like to say something? Because I think I saw a hand up over there. Please do, please do. Would you like to?
Okay,
Sure,
I
go
guess,
for it.
yeah, so I am a parent of a child that has autism as well as a teacher. So I've seen both sides. And it's really hard as a parent to see my child struggling every day. And it's not her fault. And I see her an ABA and she's a different kid. She went from Juliet Ewing came into the classroom and completely helped the specialist that works with her. And it went from I'm a bad kid to I can be president when I grow up. And I see, you know, the potential in that. And I see how good of a resource this is. And I just really hope that we can implement that with both, I mean, not only her one-on-one, but also the teachers. Because, I mean, her assistant was great if she was a neurotypical child, but she just, there was a disconnect. And it was hard to watch because I had to kind of step back as I'm a teacher in that school. And I'm also a parent to my child, and I just could watch. It's like I'm watching from a window, and I'm like, you know? So I just really hope that some things will change, and that's why I'm here. I just want to support. You know, it seems like Miss White has some really good, you know, things that she has in the works. So I really hope that they can get trained in ABA as soon as possible. So thank you for letting me support. I appreciate it.
Can I just say
Oh,
something?
please do.
I bet, since you're a teacher and a parent, that the skills that you know your daughter needs, I bet all the kids in your classroom get those.
Yes,
Because you are,
yes.
yeah, and
I do that with my 3-year-old. I'm like, I'm gonna ignore this problem behavior until we do something I like. And then, I mean, I'm not trained in it. I thought about, I mean, I teach the big kids. I teach 8th grade. And some of that works. You know, I really like how such and such, and they will get going on, you know, it's like the positive reinforcement, even with adults, like goes so far.
It
So,
works.
yeah, it really does. And it's awesome to see in place, and it really doesn't take a whole lot to get there. So I just, I appreciate you guys putting this together.
Well, and I would like to share with you too is that when we first became a committee and we were looking at the achievement gap, we focused in on the co-identification of students that are identified in the achievement gap and also identified as students with special needs. And we were marching down that path, and then there was a change in leadership and so on, so it's kind of, you know, not, but now it's right back on, okay? So we need you to come and share with us your thoughts and your ideas, your needs, your wants. Dr. White is you know, right on board. I think, Dr. White, didn't we have an academic committee meeting like the beginning of July, and you two had only been there 24 hours, and you joined us? So, I mean, absolutely. We want the best for all of our students.
I have the same concerns as some of these ladies have spoken up with, because like Juliet is one person and she has done a phenomenal job, but she's one person in a very large district, and this diagnosis is not getting smaller.
It's not.
And so that's why, you know, she can only be spread out. And Miss White, she has also reached out to me, you know, because I want my daughter to be successful, you know, and I really want her to put the right foot forward. And I feel like I know the pathway. It's just if it can get built,
Right.
you know.
Right. So I know that we are working to see what we can do, and Dr. White is on top of it, already making some changes, and just definitely.
One more thing, my daughter is receiving services with a different BCBA out in town. She does receive, she does have access with Juliet, but I really want to have that home school parent connection, because I feel like there's such a disconnect. Like her reward system that she's getting at home and school, and the like kind of like the trigger lingo, like words. I just feel like there's such a, you know, block. You know, her BCBA wants to come in and help. That's all she wants to do. You know, my insurance is paying for it. You know, has a background you know, check and, you know, I get it, well, you have to have different things in place, but, you know, it'd be nice if she could kind of have more of a.
I agree with that 100%. I
Yeah.
think it should, even if it's just a quarterly thing where they come in once and they're allowed to come in and have that meeting with the staff working directly with the child.
Because she's a different kid at home than she is at school, because she's a lot more demands on her at school, so I don't really see that. She gets to play with her toys, and I don't really, so if she was able to come in and observe and see, okay, this is something I can do in clinic,
Right.
you know, then we could have more of a fluid between all three.
So I think we've started those conversations.
Yes.
It is the same to the CBAs that I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I've met with both
They're
of
public
them,
contractors.
and we've talked about those opportunities. And right now, we do have them coming in with some other kids.
Okay.
And they observe, and I know at one high school, they've established a program, and they sat through the meeting, and they came in and trained the staff on those triggers and stuff. So that's an easy fix.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one, that's a big one for us.
That we can do is, so I'm looking at opportunities to bring them in to help set up the programs for our RBTs that we will train, and then they come in and monitor the effectiveness of those programs because they're BCBAs. And then Juliet will be certified next year, and she can do that even herself. Right now, she can't do it at that level, but yeah, so that, we're in conversations with them.
Okay.
And with insurance, and even looking at how the schools, the Medicaid and third-party insurances that allow schools, legislation was passed, as you all know, to allow school districts to also bill for those services and stuff. So that would give us another opportunity for funding to even build more capacity.
And so this is the segue into our topic for today, because these 6 TSI schools that have these memorandums of agreement, they're all identified because of their subgroup, their special education population. So some of the conversation that we are having right now is going to segue into this. So keep your questions coming. And I don't know who is presenting this. Dr. Buddy.
So we're good. So we wanted to share today the targeted support, and I want to preface this by saying that even though that we have been identified because of the population, doesn't mean that the schools aren't meeting the needs of the kids. We have some schools overall academically that their performance of all students, but we have to do a better job of moving all students and students with disabilities. And that's not the job alone of the special education staff. That's all staff. So you'll see in many of the plans that we're looking at how we improve the capacity and the teaching abilities of all teachers to work with students with disabilities, because a large percentage of the students with disabilities spend at least 80% of their time in the general education class and not removed from that setting. So what we're going to do, and we have in your packet, probably towards the back of your packet, this was a presentation that Terry Bennett shared with the board before. I wasn't sure about it for information purposes, if you all wanted to talk about that. Well, we can go straight to a plan. What we did in the back of your packet is Ms. Matson put together kind of an interim report that talks about the plans. We see the plans in the spending, but we wanted to share with you on a one-page where the schools are, and we have a couple of the principals here that can also speak more specifically to their plan as well.
I think it would be helpful just for just quickly, just as a review of how we are, where we are.
Correct. So when we talk about what is TSI, this is on the ESSA, every student that sees at, say that we must identify schools that meet certain criteria that classify them as schools in need of improvement. And this is what our State Department did, and they were required by the federal government to establish that. And so they tried to then explain to us, what does TSI? There are different categories of support. TSI is this one, and this one is targeted for subgroups specifically, and then there's CSI that talks about Title I schools, and then there are priority schools as well. So it's kind of a tiered approach from the state with TSI leading the least amount of support as well. But it really is targeted with low performing subgroups that are identified every 3 years. So once you have that identification, unfortunately, you stay with that identification for 3 years. The good thing this year is because of the cycle, you're only going to get that identification for 2 years, and then they start the 3-year cycle. And you can come off of that list, or you can stay. So the goal is to make sure that you're meeting those needs with the assistance that the state provided in finances to you to make sure that you move your kids. So it's all about growing your kids. And they're compared, this is the lowest 5% of the top performing schools in the state. Not schools like ours, so not like a Pritchardville, they're not being compared to a school like them. Will Branch Elementary is not compared to a similar school. It's the top performing districts in the state. And that was the formula and the metric that the State Department came up with for this identification. So pretty much just by the numbers, across the state, there are 207 schools across the state identified as TSI. 6 of them are here in Beaufort. And the state provided some funding to help schools put programs and processes in place to help meet the needs of those kids even more outside of what IDEA provides. So each school got $25,000 per school plus $33 per pupil. And that's what our student enrollment was at the 135th day of school as well. So here's a breakdown of the low performing subgroups for the schools across the state. 183 of them across the state were identified due to students with disabilities, with 3.9 due to Black students, using LEP, limited English proficiency, students of poverty, 1% due to white students, and another two schools due to Hispanic population. In Beaufort County, our only identifying mark was the students with disabilities category. That was the only subgroup that got us that designation as well. Here are the 6 schools in our county. We have Beaufort Elementary, Broad River, Will Branch Elementary, J.S. Shanklin, Okatee, and Pritchardville. And if you look at the list, you might go, wow, pause, because some of our schools have very high academic achievement as well, but we need to make sure that we move in all groups within, and that's something that Dr. Rodriguez has been, at least the message I've been hearing loud and clear since he came on board, so we move all and close that achievement gap as well. So again, it's due to disabilities, I said that already. Each school has a written plan to best address their school needs with this targeted group. These plans were written before the 3 of us in the back came on board. It was due to the State Department. We've since then had some conversations about the plan and some guidance in helping support the schools to continue to tweak these plans. There will be a second round of funding that will come, I think, in 2 months. And with that, we are going to make some adjustments in what we're going to expect in time and back to goals, and making sure that we have some moving targets, a stable target to reach for with our students and looking at our data. This is just a breakdown of the amount of funds that each school got. So overall as a district, we received $265,121 across those 6 schools.
Can I ask a
Sure.
question? So the per pupil amount, was that per pupil in the cohort group?
I believe it was their actual enrollment.
The whole school? I would like at some point to know how many students are in each of these cohort groups per school.
In each cohort group per school, yes. We're working on that. Power School was not fully updated. I started to run the numbers today, but we will get that to you as well. Daniel, I will run them.
And the funding became available, they were identified last November, apparently, but we did not get notification until sometime in April, my understanding. The funding was not even until June 26th, it's allowable. And so what they haven't spent will carry over in this year, plus a new amounts coming back to them for that.
Because originally the state was not going to provide financial support funding for this group, and then they, after they identified our schools, they said, well, we can't ask them to improve and they'll give them the assistance, right? As well, so that's what. All the time, right?
They do all the time.
I think they got quite a bit of an outcry from superintendents across the state. Again, we also have 2 priority schools, Hilton Head Island Middle School and Will Branch Middle School, and that's the funding for those schools. But again, I really want to point out that some of our ATSI schools, which is Technical Support Intervention, is what it stands for, have acceptable overall report card scores. I mean, one school was, I think your report card rating in this school was last year. Good, right? And a few points from 2 points away from being an excellent rating. So it's very important that we identify that again. And like Ms. Matson said, we'll receive another round of funding and really work and make sure everything is following to the overarching goal of the district and then the school renewal plans as well. So the board had some responsibilities and they think that they were meeting their responsibilities, but then said, okay, but what is actually in the plan? Can we have some more discussion about that? It is the board's responsibility to monitor implementation of plans, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we update them on, I think we're going to a quarterly cycle. It's kind of our timeline to make sure we update you with progress reports as well. And we're present at school meetings, allocate time. Again, we're gonna do that, and we're gonna ask principals to be here too, so they can speak directly about their plans as well. Question?
So it is, and I know Terry Bennett said this too, it just seems very odd, the wording of statewide breakdown by category, due to students with disabilities, due to Black students. Can you explain that to me? This doesn't really make sense to me.
So what they're saying, they looked at the different subgroups, so you have the overall performance. I'm gonna try really hard to be Terry. In some groups, and overall, and then they broke them down by subgroup categories. And when they looked at their individual data, they realized that certain subgroups were not progressive or did not show progress or met state standards at the same rate of other subgroups. And so that's why they were. Students with disabilities, most of our kids are already, they have deficits. Right. And we're working on those deficits, but they still have to take the same state assessment as those kids who are developing typically. So how do we help provide the resources for them to perform, or at least show growth? And that's the biggest thing, are we growing and moving our students?
And so, as you already pointed out, all of the TSI schools for Beaufort County School District were in that largest category.
Yes, students with disabilities, just that subgroup, correct.
It kind of reinforces what these ladies are
Yes, correct. Exactly.
primarily.
Exactly. We have, I know we touched on ADA, but what we haven't touched on at all is the new dyslexia law and OG therapy in the classrooms. Right now, I know resource teachers are getting trained, but is there a plan to extend that into class to help with, are you gonna start piloting that in these schools, or what is the plan with the dyslexia law?
OG.
Martin Gillingham or Wilson,
And
whichever one you're using.
Right, so most of these schools, and Dr. Stratus can speak a little bit more about that with, she's already on the Wilson. But yes, most of the schools have one or the other program in their plan, and it's something that we are going to monitor specifically and continue to provide support to probably grow that once, because research says that's the results are pretty good.
Yeah, and actually research says that it benefits all students, not
Correct,
just
not
dyslexic. So it's actually crucial in my mind to get it in every classroom.
Right, so Dr. Stratus can speak a little bit.
Looking at the Wilson as a tool. So the Wilson, as a teacher, I understand the Wilson is more for language, almost like language acquisition in the sense of phonemic awareness. I've worked with Wilson and have had a great amount of success with students of SLD, and I'm talking kids at high school level who cannot read.
Yes.
So as I was reviewing the plans to see that Wilson is being pulled as one of the recommendations, that's actually a conversation we had earlier today, because I've seen it act successfully. And the idea to keep in mind is that Wilson can be utilized as a smaller classroom student to teacher ratio in order to be implemented. So normally it's about a 14-to-1 ratio, so we have to keep that in mind, and the teacher has to be highly trained. So as we look at some data, right, as we look at some research, we can look at the implementation of more Wilson and the funding that we can align with it for our kids. Yeah. But all kids, because if you think about it, language learners.
Right, and I agree, and I think, our teachers do a really good job right now with our cafe program. They do small groups and they do group kids together in their level. So I think there's a way to get around, maybe we could do something like that where.
Or develop a train.
Right, where they're trained in there, and then the ones that are most severe and profound obviously would have, the more one-on-one with the resource. So in the classroom, maybe we could just do that in small
So we're talking about maybe possibly using those as interventions within Tier 1, which because we have our core curriculum, and then those could be instructions with, they're using cafes down there already doing grouping and small grouping. So looking, and that's the one thing at some of the schools we're talking about, the core instruction, and we're using research best practices for the interventions within that tier 1, which is the core instruction. So those are conversations that we're having. And so we were excited to see those in a couple of the plans as well.
Mr. Campbell?
I guess, you know, what we're looking for were specific plans for these targeted schools, and in terms of how they're gonna enhance what we already, what we already don't have, but how they're gonna improve that particular subgroup.
I think we're going there.
Yeah, you're going there?
We're going there.
Okay, all right.
Okay, good.
Because what I gotta hear
Because
is,
we've seen the budgetary request, we've
Right.
just not ever seen a
But
plan.
the state does not that was the thing, the state did not give us guidance or have a template, however.
So how, that, you're addressing the
That's
same thing I did earlier today,
Yeah.
Mr. Campbell. So what we're asking for future going forward, because we're not gonna go back, and the state did not require a little more detail, but to have a better understanding, be able to speak to our community as to what we are doing with these funds. We're taking a look at our goals should be tied to our strategic plan. Everything should be supported then from our school improvement goals. But we're also asking for implementation and practice and outcomes, and then evidence of practice. So we've not sat, we've just kind of designed a draft practice that would be used. So when we go forward to write what our goals are, we want a little more information to tie to this. What is the why that's gonna correlate with the expenditures?
yes.
So we're working on something to that degree. Upon review, it will come to the board for your review as well and input. So
Right.
we're very much on the same page.
It's an IEP for the school based.
Yeah,
That's what you're doing, I mean, which is great, I mean,
And that's our
So
responsibility.
what the
to
action
come in.
plan, your needs assessment.
Yes, and we evaluate what we have, then
Right.
it's upon us to make sure that we support the schools in that way. So we'll go ahead and start with the plan at Pritchardville, Ms. Lewis here. And she can speak to, this is one of the places where we're looking at the Wilson rating
Yes.
system. We also, I've got to see some of her PD last Friday, led by the special ed department, where they're talking about inclusive practices for all students. So that was really exciting to see that they're well on the way. But she can speak better about those things that you're including to make sure that you meet the kids' needs.
Thank you, Dr. White. Good afternoon. It's so nice to be here and have a chance to have the discussion with you. Just as she mentioned, we will have a number of staff members who have already started. Let me take a little rewind. Every certified staff member in our school goes through a 2-part dyslexia training. We started that 2 years ago because, just as we said, there is application for all students. Ms. Parisi, our literacy coach, is trained, and that's part of an integral training that we provide to all staff. For our targeted students who need additional support, we have 4 staff members who have just about completed the training for Wilson. Starting September 3rd, we get our small groups going quickly. I can say to you that the general ed teacher, I can show you the names and say, this is when the general ed teacher is meeting small group, this is when the resource teacher is meeting small group, this is when the ESOL, because some of these students come across multiple subgroups.
I'm concerned with the focus now, this Wilson reading system. I suppose it's demonstrated to do more for this subgroup
For a
than
small
has been done.
percentage.
Yes.
Because there is no one size that fits all.
I know.
We utilize level literacy intervention in small group and in our power up groups as well. So all teachers are trained so that they work on 3 queuing systems. But for a small percentage of students, just as Dr. Stratos, who are not making the type of progress that we want to see, I've had experience in Virginia where we've seen a lot of success with Wilson. So it's research-based, we have a weekly progress monitor, and the data is reviewed consistently.
And this is something new to your school.
And we have not had Wilson as a strategy for those students who need a further tier of support.
Yeah. How long have you been using it?
No, well, I used it in Virginia for years,
This is
but
the first-
this will be first for
Okay.
Pritchardville.
So, well,
I ask a question?
Oh, I want you to.
Okay.
I want you
So,
to.
this will be the first time that the kids in this cohort, the special education group, will be utilizing Wilson as well?
A certain number of students, not all students, because I can show you a struggling reader report that shows that these kids are, that we're closing an achievement gap for reading, which is a life skill. Unfortunately, we're held to a formula, I mean, we're just being candid here, by the state that requires our students with disabilities to be measured by the same students who exceed, who score and exceed on SC Ready. And so we have our graphs, I can show you because we're data driven at Pritchardville. Children are learning how to read, they're learning how to comprehend an author's message. But to get them to, for a small percentage of students who need to get a skill set, to take them to that level, Wilson Reading is going to be a good fit. Others are, I can show you that they're responding to level literacy intervention. So if you're a classroom teacher and you have those skills for your skill set, and then our resource teachers have skills for their skill set, and we have a coordinated schedule so that you're seeing your students for a small group and then they work for the resource. That's what our steps and framework. It's a team effort. And then we progress monitor weekly. Our data teams run every 6 weeks. We look at our MAP scores. We can tell you which students don't have a high level of engagement. Many different aspects, moving parts, if you will, come together to promote student achievement.
And how many students are in your cohort?
The subgroup this year, because it's ever changing, this year's 5th grade moved on to 6th grade, so we had a net gain of 2 more students because we have 11 students who moved up to 3rd grade. So we'll probably be right around 40 in our grades 3 through 5 cohort group.
And so just so you know, from point of reference, you only have to have 20 students and then you're identified as having a cohort. So 20 years ago it used to be 40 and we dropped it down to 20.
Are any of these students identified in this subgroup because of their numeracy, not just the literacy?
For the formula, it's both math and reading on SC Ready. And again, it's the state is measuring against and exceeds. So if a child scores and exceeds, you earn 3 points for math, 3 points for reading. So our students with disabilities are measured against an exceeds versus a meets. So when you think about what would be your goal for all children, I mean, we're here for authentic learning. You know, I want to be able to say to you that every child is learning how to read and they're going to go out and they're going to move forward in whatever career. And that's what we're dedicated to. But we have to deal with the here and now and what the state is asking us. So it's both math and literacy.
And so one of the things they're doing is really looking at the students in that cohort and looking at their data individually and also looking, for me, being a former speech language pathologist, I looked at that subgroup within there, the speech language impairment as the only disability category, and seeing that in one school there were 9 students and only one of that group met state standards. So what can we do for those kids that don't have the cognitive deficits or the learning disability? What do we need then to meet their needs? And so those are some conversations I will be having. And Dr. Julia Brissett is one of the new coordinators, and she's supporting all the TSI schools, but her primary focus for the district is to look at SPED curriculum and making sure we're getting very strong and things are being done with fidelity. So that will be one of her responsibilities too. And that's why the restructuring of the coordinators is to make sure.
I know, I think what you did with them, I don't know if everyone here knows what you did, but maybe you can tell these folks. Because I heard from the coordinators when I went to visit them last week, that she basically leveled the coordinators. We used to have coordinators that did like little, like clusters. So, but they didn't all focus only on elementary. So they would be like at an elementary school, at a high school, at a middle school, and now you have them
kind of like
focusing on an age group.
Specialties.
Because one of the things I can say as somebody who goes in as an advocate into these meetings, there's a big difference, there was across this district, depending on what school you go into, on the team you work with and the services that you're getting.
Yes.
And like I could say, for instance, we have had a lot of resource teachers that are trained in OG. Now I'm hearing we have some in Wilson. Why didn't we just pick something as a district and work with it? That's what I'm trying to figure out. And it's as a parent, as I said, I actually have 2 dyslexic daughters. They're twice exceptional, they call them. And for those kids, they also struggle to get identified and get the things they need, because it's not only about meeting too, it's about them being their absolute best, every child. So that's why when I went and they told me that was the first thing you did, I was like, hallelujah, because I know now that what coordinator I'm gonna get. When I go in and I know that it's gonna be, and that person is going to be consistent in what they tell that team.
Right, and so for example, at Richardville, even though Dr. Brissett is supporting that school, if it's a student with emotional disability, then the coordinator that's best to work with that staff would be Teacher Holmes.
Right.
Or Juliet Ewan to call in for that, and they will follow that case and put those practices in there. So it's a mindset shift, and really taking people to understand that that's it, and you don't have to wait till we're there on a certain day to have meetings and do all of that. So I'm excited about it.
I am too, I already saw a difference.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Blue?
My question is just how the math, I'm sorry. I was just wondering what math component you're using. I mean, are you gonna have manipulatives? What are we doing with that?
So, once students take, we utilize iReady for all students in our school. So, once we do the diagnostic, then we take a look at what strands, and then they will receive small group. They receive small group with their teacher, and then they receive small group support in an area identified as a deficit.
With their teacher or with the resource teacher? Okay, so they would focus on both. Okay, because I know a lot of the kids are already meeting in small groups with their teacher, whether they're identified.
And that's with the guided math framework. You see that, and then with the beauty with the iReady progress monitoring, teachers can use that as a resource. Our numeracy folks can bring that in as supports for teachers, and then also in small group too. So we don't use a particular program, because what we're trying to do is support South Carolina standards. If we see somebody's low, maybe in numbers and number sense, we can support that. I can tell you that there's a 30-minute power up time, 2 to 3 times a week in numeracy.
So, but is there a different strategy that they're employing? Because obviously I would think that our teachers taught numeracy right to each one of these children as they were growing. So is there a different strategy? Like, are they trained to know which strategy to use to do that? Because the first way didn't work. Let's just say, my normal strategy doesn't work. What's my backup?
Or we didn't have the proper training to make sure that worked effectively.
Right, exactly.
So that's the thing that we're evaluating and coming up with a really set professional development plan, and really we were just brainstorming from something you said, train the trainer model, and really looking at those things. One of the schools, so Buford L, they are going with theirs, they have a focus in math, and they have someone who's going to come in and work on math. And so my question to them today was, okay, what program or strategies will that person utilize? So we came back to the table, and we're going to work with them to make sure that she has scientific research-based strategies for math for that person. Because you can bring in people all the time, but if you still don't give them those good practices. So also Will Ranch Elementary is another one that their focus is on math, and we're working with them to make sure. Like I said, we got the funds in April, then summer went away, and now we're coming into another set. And then also just looking at what we're doing district-wide as far as those best practices in all classrooms. So yes, so some of them have a focus on math, and we will look at whether it's touch math, whether it's using manipulative, whatever. I like personally touch math for certain kids, and it works well. So those are some things that we will be doing. Yeah,
whatever we do, I just hope it's consistent, because I have to say that's one of my biggest criticisms of the district, is that it really is not equal or equitable, I should say. And, you know, it's a totally different experience when you're in, you know, Pritchardville's a great school, different experience, they have a great staff, you know, Red Cedar, same thing, that team is unbelievable. But there are schools that they can go into that it just doesn't have that same thing going on.
Right, like 12
So-
years ago, we had Wilson at Beaufort Middle School. Wilson was for small groups, identified students from MAP testing that needed. It's been around, but it hasn't been consistent.
And it wasn't in OT where my kids were, and they were both dyslexic, so they had no, I had to pay for that and outside therapy, you know, and do all that.
And it shouldn't matter.
That's what I'm saying, it absolutely shouldn't matter, it should be accessible to all of our children.
Right, and he's research-based, we know Wilson works.
Oh,
We
absolutely.
know OG works. You know, and
Yeah,
they're kind
they
of just
both work, but let's
intervention,
just be
but-
consistent about what we're doing.
Right.
And do the program
Okay.
Like she said, we have to have people trained to adequately apply the programs. That's the other thing. But it's a tough fix. I mean, just knowing the whole, it's a tough fix. You know, even some of those programs work better with some teachers and kids than others, and you gotta get that match, and that's tough. Now, I'm thinking now that I'm getting a different picture, that we may be
One
ahead
second,
of.
Mr. Campbell, the camera's gonna pick up all this background noise, and we won't be able to hear the person that's speaking, so even though you have a great voice. So, okay.
So now you're getting all this information.
Yeah, and then we're getting this information maybe prematurely in terms of what we want. We're looking to see what's being done, how can we service how can we facilitate the movement, which of course is a state-driven movement, and it's not all, as she mentioned from Pritchardville, that's not all the indicators that we really need to focus on as educators, because sometimes the state will shift that measurement in 2 or 3 years, and all of a sudden, those categories shift. So we have to also cross-reference that with national, norms. So that's the other part of it. But I'm saying, I think we're not gonna be able to get what we expected here today in terms of a complete focus on each particular group. But you're working on it,
We're working
and
on it.
that's what I'm
Yes.
hearing. Yeah.
Yeah, we're working
Yeah.
on it, we have
Yeah.
plans in place, and we'll work with the schools, and then we'll have a more succinct plan, kind of
Right.
like, very visible. So, but this did give, an opportunity of what the activities are and where we are so far.
What we are hearing is that you guys are on top of the game.
That's what
That's what we are hearing.
Right.
All right, that's what we are hearing.
Right,
Yeah.
no, this is,
right?
this is definitely a step forward from our initial understanding of what, because,
Yes.
first of all, I guess I did not realize, or maybe I didn't hear, that the state didn't require a plan. We just,
Because it says right on here, as relates to your TSI plan. That's
Right.
why,
They didn't give them a template.
yeah.
right,
Oh.
so that's crucial information, that
Yeah.
there's not a plan template out there floating
Right, the
around
priority
each of the
schools, when you
schools.
look at theirs, you see a plan. you
Right,
see a template.
exactly.
No, they didn't do
Right.
that for, this.
Well, my question was as simple as I was going, my question was, at what point will we start evaluating to see how we're making gains and strides, and when will we put that in place to kind of, make sure we get more bang for our buck?
You wanna take
Were
that
you
one?
sure you weren't in our meeting
Did it this
earlier
morning?
today? Because actually that's a conversation that we're having, is how do we know that we're hitting the mark? How do we identify the outcome, right? And what are the benchmarks from here to there? So, as I stated earlier, we want to be able to go forward. It's not fair, I got my principal hat on. We can't go backwards. We have principals who are very data driven, and they're going to be able to say, we did this, I got this as a result. But part of that is be able to have that capacity with all our educators, and I still consider my colleagues, my principals, that we can have this conversation that at this time period we were here, we did this intervention, we were here, that we can actually report that information to the community and to the board. So you were in our meeting, but you didn't know you were there today, sir. And I mean that sincerely, because these are the conversations that we have been having basically today.
So, Dr. Strauss and I, coming from a district that was extremely data-driven, extremely focused around progress monitoring throughout the year, all year long, and so I had you know, a lot of those questions in terms of what we use to Project Progress Monitor. How well is whatever it is we're using to Progress Monitor aligned to what those state standards and expectations are? Because at the end of the year, right, I mean, our students are measured by a certain set of standards, and if what we're progress monitoring with doesn't align to those standards, then we could be going this way and we think we're doing great, but we really need to be over here, right? So, so those are a lot of the same questions, you know, I've been asking. We have some progress monitoring systems in place that we use, and my questions are really around that alignment, you know, and so so that's really the important part that we're digging into, and I think we have some systems. Question is, what's the frequency of that progress monitoring, right? Are we progress monitoring in September and then not again until January? Well, that I mean, if you're going off course, you want to know sooner, right? Right. You know, so those are.
Right. And if I may add, so being able to look at data, we have to be careful because it's easy to be a technocrat or use numbers. And one of the things I was sharing with individuals earlier today is one way to get you to change behavior is actually using data, right? Because data could either confirm or disconfirm a belief practice that you may have. So when we start looking at data, I want us also to look a little broader, right? So also, what's the attendance rate for our kids? What's the discipline impact for the kids? So it's taking our standard information, but let's add other criteria to this so we get a better look at the whole child. So I need to predicate the conversation that way so that you understand we're not just looking at it as a standardized model. We want to be able to be in that conversation of the child. So, and I think that's a growth area that I think we all need to look at.
I think that's an excellent point because this district has used a lot of data. There are many schools that manipulate the data ad nauseum, you know, and it's just, you've got your map data, you've got the fall, spring, fall, winter, spring. But then we scaled back and we didn't do all fall, winter, spring. Right, and you got F&P, which has been going on for what, 10 years? I mean, a decade to do the progress monitoring with your Fontes and Pinnell, which is which was an initiative a decade ago. So I mean, there's data, but it's, you know, what I'm seeing is that it's that plan and those objectives, like you stated. So this template that you're going to come up with, so because there is no plan, you know, by December, okay? SMART goals, by December, 5% of the subgroup that was identified will have made, you know, X number amount of gains as evidenced by, you know, that's what that's
so we're looking for.
Yeah.
That's
and then there's the personnel support. You know, we got to make sure that we have some grand ideas, especially in special education, but do we have the people to do it?
Yes. We need bodies and are we doing the proper observations of the teachers?
Say again, I'm sorry.
And are we also doing proper observations of our teachers, utilizing our evaluation model as a professional growth model, not just as an evaluative tool? So these are the conversations we're actually having at the table already, to be very direct with each of you in here.
That's pretty impressive. You've been here 48 hours.
I know.
That's
It probably doesn't take them long to see though what we see. I
No,
can't imagine it does. You visited a lot of schools.
I have,
Yeah.
you know, the thing is, I visited obviously mostly in the summer, that's when I've been here, right? So you don't get to see the full scale and full scope, which is what I'm really looking forward to now that we've started. But you know, that's what I'm accustomed to. Exactly what you're saying, that's what I'm accustomed to. And that tool should be about growth and development, feedback, right? So that we continuously, I talked a lot about building instructional leadership and instructional leadership capacity. That's an expectation that our principals, our assistant principals, and our leadership teams at the school are building instructional capacity, not only in themselves, but instructional capacity in each of the teachers on a regular basis, right? It's a growth mindset and a growth idea, right? And our work depends a lot on our human capital. And we have to develop our human capital. You know, we can't just say, well, we're good, okay, that's good. Well, good's the enemy of great, right? It's in the book Good to Great, Jim Collins. That's where we want to get to, right? And we just, the only way you get there, you keep improving, feedback, improvement, feedback, improvement, feedback, improvement.
Are we monitoring resource teams as well? I mean, you're talking about observing classroom teachers, but are the resource teachers also monitored periodically in this? Because they see our kids.
They should.
A lot of.
So that was actually part of, again, we were there. So the evaluation tool that's utilized by the county, if my understanding is correct, allows for classroom teachers and outside classroom teachers.
Yes.
I want to be able to look at both areas of results. Does that make sense? And then take a look at that with regard to the students who they are having contact with.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
That's exactly
I could
what my
be-
question is.
All right, my observations could be, but my student performance could be Y. And it should be on a trend, the trend should be on the same direction. So these are things that we're starting to have discussion about. There's very, very strong support for that. So we're kind of on the same page using the same language, but we have to keep in mind, we also have to get our other leadership involved in this, and that's the principals and the school leadership. So even like the form that we're drafting, we have to go forward and share that with school leadership, right? Get their input for application, and the idea of how we're looking at things. That human capital part has to go to our school leadership. Not that they don't have the capacity, because they do, but they need to understand that we're collectively working at this together, right? To have that consistency practice, because that's a theme that I keep hearing, consistency of practice, right? So there's a leadership element that we have to get together with as well. So, and we're trying to work at ways how to take a look at yourself.
I think also it would help to have the principals understand that they're measured not only on their test scores, that because they're,
It's a survey.
yeah, I think that it's, you know, growth, it should be a growth objective overall. And the reason I'm saying that is because I think that they have been evaluated on their test scores, and they always look at their report card, and they're not looking at these subgroups necessarily to lift them, and that's what we should be doing as educators, is lifting all of our population, not just applauding the ones that started at the top and ended at the top.
Well, that's
So-
the conversation around closing achievement gap.
Yeah, and then, but it is an attitude that happens with leadership, because they are graded on that, they are promoted on those things, and so.
And looking at the principal evaluation too, and the education, the rubric 4.0, what I like about the revisions of both of those documents and evaluative is all about growth. It's all about growing the professionals so they can grow their students. And so the test score is just a small piece, and so that's a shift that we definitely have to make with them, because the whole principal evaluation tool is about growth that the state has us using as well. So it's for them to really understand that.
Yeah, and, you know, I'm in concert with Doc in terms of building the culture. Once you build a culture of the educators, you don't have to worry about them looking at the subsets and they're making sure now the total child from all of the schools is growing, and they're focused on that. Because you're right, certain educators now are not looking at, they're looking at what we did.
Right, they've
from
been
that
great.
state report card.
Yeah.
And of course, I remember Doc came in for an interview, he said, it's great, they did great, but they didn't move any.
Thank you.
And, you know,
Thank you.
so those are the elements that I think we're driving, and that it might not resonate right away, but it'll eventually resonate.
You have to remember, right, we are where we are, right? And, you know, we have to build it and shift and change, right? And that's not an overnight
No, I know.
fix, okay?
No.
So I just wanna, I say that so that I can temper, you know, that thought. I want it to be real, right? I want a real conversation, and I think it for me to tell you that this is an overnight fix, and it would, tomorrow I'm gonna walk out of here, I'm gonna say it shall be done, and it'll be that way, right? No, because it takes time to build this, and when you're working at culture and you're working a shift like this about how we do this systemic work and systemic change, it's hard work, it takes time, but if you get it right, then it's sustainable, right? And that's what we want. We want it to be sustainable.
Yeah, and we have to involve, like, just like I know we're involving these parents here, but I feel really strongly we need to involve parents of every aspect. This Bluffton cluster is very different than north of the Broad or Hilton Head, and I think the parents and community members also need to be involved. I love that you guys do this open forum like
Well,
this.
I'm gonna,
That's relaxed a lot of the stress on parents knowing they can talk to you.
Yep.
I'm gonna be moving around the county. August 27th is the first one, and then twice a week at different school sites through the month of September throughout the county. I'm calling a Listen and Learning Tour. And it's an opportunity to engage the community in different areas of the county and the school district. And you know, want to hear what's going well, and I want to hear where we need to improve and grow upon it. So I'm looking forward to hearing that information, right? Truth hurts sometimes, but you got to know it and you got to hear it.
Yeah, I think there's actually a lot of good though. I think you're going to hear good too. I don't think
There is good. There's a lot of good.
because I don't want to feel like I'm bashing on this.
That's why.
No.
So the conversation is about what's working really well and what you're really proud of,
Right.
and what is it that you see that we have an opportunity to grow and work on, right? And what is it? How do you see a great way or opportunity for us to collaborate and work together?
Can I make a suggestion too? Is it possible to do, like, when you invite people out, I know you probably already put these on the calendar, is it possible to involve the school's SICs to coordinate, say, a spaghetti night, so it's a family night, so that people are actually attracted to come, they don't think it's just another boring, somebody's gonna lecture me for an hour. I think we need, in order to engage people, like, I remember when I was a kid, I was so excited about spaghetti dinner at school, you know, or whatever. I mean, there's gotta be a way we can get the P2, the SIC, somebody to bring them out for something else, you know what I mean? Have it be a family conversation,
So
like a round table.
If I could throw an idea towards you that I had earlier today with our fine and performing arts coordinator, taking the opportunity of doing a showcase, and Dr. Rodriguez doesn't know this yet, but doing a showcase at our school district of the talents of our children and art, and having a gallery walk that we can highlight the different schools, right? And do a gallery walk of the artwork of our children, and have the teachers actually develop the rubric to identify what will be part of the gallery walk, and open it up to the community at night, putting together some, these are the things that we could look at doing some showcase, because there's a lot of money spent on clay. So let's showcase the clay work, but let it be a competition, and we can do by week, we can work out some of the quirks and quagmires, but why aren't we utilizing like free real estate for us?
Yes.
And bring it, and kids love to compete.
Oh, absolutely.
So what will it cost us? Some ribbons and certificates, right? And we can design flexibility of time and then highlight our fine and performing arts within the district building.
Yeah, I have to say, Jim Foster's done a great job about sharing on the Beaufort County
Yeah,
Facebook
so-
page.
yeah,
There's so
so-
many amazing artists in our
Right.
community. I had no idea these kids were so talented.
And it's a commonality of man art.
I
right?
think we sort of hijacked.
Yeah, sorry.
I just have a few more questions about the information that we do have, even though it is not the plan yet. So the oversight of this, I do see that Interville is going to implement Wilson Reading. But then Okeechobee Elementary is doing Orton Gillingham. I mean, isn't there some value in the whole district using the same? And then it looks like Broad River has scholastic literacy. So is there oversight before these are being implemented as far as like a commonality like we were just discussing? Because the training is
Maybe
critical.
politically correct.
Say again?
Maybe politically
So,
correct.
some of these,
We're already executing.
some of these plans, right, things were executed a while ago, okay? So, and launched, right? So essentially, when you have something like this and you have a few different things now that are already in place, right? I say at this juncture, one of the, I guess a good thing we could do out of this is take a look at 3 different programs and see which one is moving
That's making
the best.
lemonade, right?
Yes.
Right, okay.
That's true, and you may find
And
that
that's
OG and
another
Wilson
way
are
to look at it.
equally, and then the schools could choose them, but we have paid money for these people to be trained, I know that.
Okay.
that
So
would be a waste.
that's
So
where
we're
that's where
already
we are,
down.
and I think that's the way that we need to look at it from at this juncture.
Okay. Can I follow up on that? So I understand, there was an attempt for the plan, so The one where it says like, provide extra support to students through hiring of additional personnel. Well, what does that support gonna look like?
So-
Those are the types of things that we're interested in, I think.
Yeah.
How many hours, is it gonna be a 2-to-1 ratio? It's those types of things
Right.
that really
You're reading,
to utilize.
you're reading like an academic,
Well,
right?
you know,
And that's important, and actually, Dr. White's gonna speak to
Good.
something that we're trying to be able to address
Right.
that
Okay.
lens.
Yeah, so that was our same exact question. So again, when we get with the group of principals, we're gonna be talking about what is the root cause. So now you have to look at your data. You already know it's that subgroup. I know like
She has it.
Ms. Blue knows it, but when we call her today and have a conversation, you can tell me where her students were, where they had already gone in a short period of time, and she has other markers in place. Perfect. So she'll be like our little model when we show the other principals when to do that. But the root cause, and then also look at that measurable goal statement. What is it going to be? And that's, like you said, decrease the number of fifth grade student stories that's not being go up as measured by SEL, South Carolina Ready. And then what are the activities, which a lot of what you're seeing are just things or activities they're doing to support that. And then what, how are we going to evaluate the outcome? How do we know what we're doing and what we put in place are having the effect that we want and our students are making progress? So we're gonna spend some time with our principals, and most of them already do this, and then just add the budget part, which you really have on the back side of it. And one thing Dr. Stratus said to me today is to make sure that these all align with their school improvement plans that they already have, and maybe take some goals or some things that we can do. The activities can still be the goals soon, but what is that goal? Where are we trying to get? And our students, if we only have 10%, we don't expect in a year to have 80%, right? That's not probably smart and realistic. I would love it, but you know, that doesn't work like that. But how do we get there? And then my team too will be supporting them as well. Because we're gonna be doing like the walks in the classrooms and stuff. So that was it.
Is there gonna be something in place to monitor these kids? Remember we had this Island Academy thing where we just kind of sent them to wherever and people were supposed to monitor them? These kids that say Brenda Blue gets them to where they need to be in fifth grade, are they gonna still be monitored? Because they're gonna switch schools. Most of them, some of them are K, they won't.
So if you're
But
going,
are we gonna follow these kids? Because that's one of the biggest concerns. I see kids meet there and then they just fall off.
I think with what Dr. Rodriguez has said, and if we're doing progress monitoring, we're looking at our data, this will become second nature, and that this continues to happen from our end, and most definitely will be. Just because we only have in the world, I just have a small subgroup to look at, while he has, I mean, we have all of them, but I could be that, but yeah.
I would like to see transition meetings be the standard, not the exception.
They understand that.
They're not required every time. I think they
You're talking
should.
about from
Yeah,
fifth
some kids get them,
to
some
sixth,
don't. I
and
feel
from
like it should
eighth
be,
to ninth.
yeah,
You're talking about when you
they-
go from elementary to middle school or middle school to high school?
yes.
Yeah, they happen every spring, and there's vertical articulation.
So there are more conversations to be had outside of this, you know, maybe in a different time. I know that it's just
Right,
about.
so Dr. Rodriguez said he's doing a listen and learning tour. One of the things that a group of parents reached out to me, and I promised them, and that percent is that parent later on from that, we're going to have some community parent meetings as well for just SPED, so we can get a feel for all the parents and understanding where we be. And the goal I promised that I said we will do the first one in September. So we'll be working on that, and then we can have those, and I'll kind of structure it very similar to the method that he uses, what we're doing well, where we need to go, and that kind of thing. Yeah.
So when do we anticipate that this will be, and when's the
We
first
still need to go through a
quarterly?
review with Dr. Rodriguez and team.
Right.
And I'd like to get it passed with some eyes of some principals who are involved.
Sure.
I think that's kind of important as well. So as the next cycle comes up, and I believe the next application,
Is it 2 months?
I'm hoping to have it executed by then. So as I get it through, and I might still refer to Dr. Rodriguez as the third floor, as I get it put through that way, then through principals who are involved in the process, to say, is this feasible, and let's educate them a little bit to that. So our goal would be that we could bring this back to you October. okay, unless you want it sooner. You just tell me what you need.
Just as a reminder, it's already on the board, schedule for September, it will be September 17th. The board has decided you do quarterly reports on the PSI and priority schools, and that date was already set. Yeah, so you have to.
Okay. You have to be ready.
If I may say what your point is, if we can, I will work with district regarding tagging our children who are in the subgroups at these schools in order to be able to look at some type of, if there's any difference from last year to this year, and maybe that's something else that we could look at to bring to the table to you. Again, it's only superficial information because there's so many other influences on a child and learning, but we could take a look from that perspective as well. So we'll work on something to that effect, okay? Because I was trying to listen to, you know, your question, and like, how do we know if? So
Right, and
I'll take a look to see what we can do in that regard. I wrote a note.
And I brought my adult friend with disabilities here. You've met him before.
Yes.
He'll come back again. But his biggest concern was exactly that. He said when they spend so much time pushing in that they didn't track me how, you know, where I was falling off. And he will tell you that himself. He'll be at the next meeting, I'm sure. But that's really where, you know, I fear for our kids, because it's great, like we seem to do a really good job elementary level, then in middle school we start to slide off, and then by the time they're in high school, yeah.
I have one more quick question. I see Miss Blue has Words Their Way on here. I love that program personally. How much is it used through the district? Is that one of those consistent things that's being used?
Well,
It's supposed to be everywhere.
It's supposed to be
It was
everywhere?
part
I'm
of
sorry,
the,
that wasn't my response.
no, it's fine, it's
So
just
sorry.
that, it's just what I was just gonna say, right, you know, she would know it at Bridgerville, but Dr. Straddles is new,
Yeah.
I'm new, I haven't seen it in action, you know, yet, so,
Okay.
Words Their Way, wasn't that part of the literacy plan?
Yeah.
I
Fun
don't
as a
know what
banal.
it's supposed to be everywhere.
Yeah, just like some of those Caesar's English and some of the, I mean, you know, there were a lot of, supposed to be
That's
everywhere.
a research-based program that
Research.
I've had great success
Yeah.
with. So that's what, when I saw it on here, I'm like, oh, I like that.
Yeah, I'm excited about all this stuff, so
Okay.
I could talk forever, but
Yeah.
yes.
Didn't we do an
Great.
audit of all the programs we were using? Oh, that's not an actual program though, that's a,
Yeah.
okay, so yeah.
Can I make a comment about the programs? Because I've been in some schools, I saw some great things going on, and I wrote down a lot of questions. But one question I've been thinking about, it's been on my mind all day. A teacher emailed me and said, how do I access iReady? And so when I get a question like that, I wonder, who else doesn't know how to access iReady? Who else doesn't know how to implement the program or progress monitor, look at data, if I get a question such as that, which makes me wonder, with the different programs that we have in a district, have teachers been retrained on how to use them, how to look at data, because sometimes we make assumptions they can do all these things, when in actuality, they just want to know how to log in. So I think that's something we have to look
Yeah,
at.
and that could be
all the
something that
programs
has to do
we
with
implement.
onboarding, actually, because we have a lot of new teachers, and it could just be an onboarding issue.
I don't know if it was an onboarding or veteran, I just saw the question, how do I log into iReady?
So that's critical, because that gives them a lot of information.
Yeah, that's pretty
So,
tough.
if I could share to what one of the things we've discussed, and is the idea that being able to build that capacity amongst us, that we all know what's out there, resources, then having that conversation with leadership at schools, and sharing that conversation with leadership at schools, that this is an expectation, these are the tools that are out there, right, this is what we would be looking for, right? Let's talk about this, and then you go from that leadership of the school, we're hoping that principals then go to their APs, have that conversation, we should be aligned at what we're saying to the principals as what our team is saying to the instructional leaders, right, the department heads. So if we look at a tiered approach of information going out and building on that, we will get to the point that whenever I'm onboarded, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, because someone's gonna be reminded at a DIL, a Department Instructional Leader meeting, of what we have. So we are trying to put, there's a lot out, all we need is the systems, we just need a little more to put
Yeah,
in place.
that's it. And one of the things that would be great if we could, you know, structure into place is, you know, when the year ends, for example, or before the year begins, right? within 1 or 2 days, right, where before students arrive or after students have left, right? But ideally, right before students arrive, that we have some of the training time, or some of these training dates with the teachers, so we can go through some of these expectations around these real critical areas or supports that we're gonna have in place to try to move student achievement, so that everybody is really clear. If you're a brand new teacher, right, you know, you might not know how to log into this thing. How do we make sure that you have what you need, and how we use this, and what we're doing with it, right? I mean, so that everybody can hit the ground running from day one.
Right, and we have so many. I mean, it would have to be differentiated because in some schools, IRA is only used for special education. So you would have to look at your special education teacher, you know, as far as the new ones. And then there's Enrich, and then there's, oh my gosh, there's so many. Like Google Classroom.
So one thing, you know.
And it's, I'm sorry, Dr. Rodriguez, but it's our first year without a summer institute, which was also an avenue we used to use.
Another play, exactly,
Yeah, right.
exactly. And just a thought is that, as well, I lost my train of thought.
But
I'm sorry, I
Doc, if I could
apologize.
build on the academic perspective, another conversation, so it's not only looking at my subgroups in the sense that my kids weren't performing, but also taking our best teachers and having that opportunity, those who are excelling at AP testing, industry certification exams, utilizing these teachers as individuals to build the capacity of our other teachers. So I want us to realize that we're not just, we're looking across the board on my kids, at our children, so that we could meet the needs across. Does that make sense what I'm saying as well? So the conversation isn't just on my children acquisition of language and literacy and numeracy and inquiry, right? Because we get to get the science part, but also my kids who are already there, how do I get more kids there and share that talent of that great teacher? Right, so those are things that we're, and this, people want to do it. And that's that.
Well, thank you very much for this update on the TSI, and that we will look for a little more of the plan and where we are in numbers and things like that on September 17th. Thank you for that, Dr. Glauser. I appreciate you telling us about that date. So,
May I just say one thing about it?
please do.
And I sit on the finance side here, but I'm an educator from 32 years, preschool teacher, business office, but I had a conversation today with Ms. Blue. It's kind of been a mess, I would say, that, you know, since the plan wasn't clear, we just did what the state asked them to do. They did that.
Right.
But even within that mess and the chaos that it looks like, talk about how her mindset changed. And that's what it takes to do that. She's had several conversations. So you want to hear what she said? Because it looks kind of like it's been that way.
How did your mindset change?
I don't know how candid we can be, but
Absolutely can be.
when we received notice on April 9th, it was a little bit shocking.
I bet it was.
Because we are a very proactive school. We have worked very hard to build capacity. The trainings that Dr. Stratos talked about, we do that at Pritchardville. And I'm just being we grow talent, and every child has talent.
Right.
And we differentiate and we teach the standards. 2 years ago, we went to standards-based instruction, stepping out in a little traffic, but we pre-assess. And so when students need extra support, I know Chris has heard me say, it's kind of like going to a specialist. If you're not getting better, do you keep going back to the same doctor? So the teachers have heard me say this, you know, and so when we were the ones that notified the district. I'm just telling, we're just being candid here, and so like the way we do it, I immediately reached out to Ms. Dixon at the state, and she and I have established a relationship, and she's been very gracious with her time. And so, I mean, we already have a data notebook, and we just need one more little piece for our formula to know if we've made a 50% growth for our student with disabilities. And I'm working with Daniel Fallon to get that last piece for our formula. And so you immediately jump to this mindset, we're failing. We are failing. And so we've had, probably half dozen, 70 conversations. And when we were talking with her, she's coming at us with Christian Bell. She said, Brenda, you've got to let it go that you're failing, because you're not failing. This is a way that you are now accessing supports, additional supports. And when she was talking to me about that, you know, it was a mind shift, you know, a paradigm shift. That these are supports that are available for students. And so, you know, through the additional supports, you know, we are increasing the number of teachers who have the Wilson training. You know, we are bringing on some additional resources for Words Their Way. And, you know, I'm confident that we have data to show our students are learning. I mean, you know, I've got a struggling reader report that would just say, hey, they're closing an achievement gap. So eventually, I'm confident that we will earn our 28 points that we need, you know, to meet what the state, but it was a true, and you know, when Denise, I said to her, I was like, honey, I'm totally I'm in a different place now in my thinking. And so, I appreciate you allowing me to, you know, I know it's late in the day, but it's all good. It's all good.
Yes.
It's all good.
I remembered what I was going to say, and you triggered my mind. And so, many ways, right? We've been a system in transition, right? I mean, we have, and in this division in instructional services, right, for quite some time. Right. Okay. And so, it's not uncommon, right, that when you have a system in transition for a bit of an extended period of time, that everybody doesn't run in the same direction necessarily, right? And that's not unusual, okay? So the big challenge now, right, for me and the team, and all of us, is to get everybody running in the same direction. The strategic plan is going to be really important in doing that, you know, and you know, because if we're not running this way, where we're supposed to be running, where are we going?
Yeah, right.
Right. So it's not uncommon, and that's what we're starting to do. You know, that's what we're starting to do. I'm glad you're here, Mary. I think you're a great asset. And,
great team.
You know, we have really good principals. I'm just excited about that.
Yes.
And that leadership is so incredibly important to get this work done. So, Ms. Blue, thank you for your input.
And thank you very much.
Letting me
Well,
so sorry. I know
it's an important mind shift to see it that way.
Well, you know, I just want to speak for myself, but I think I'm speaking for all three of us. We're not trying to be critical at all. We're educators. All three of us are educators. So when you know exactly when I'm principal of a school and you know, I took over one in North Carolina that was on the state list. I'm like, to the state, help me. You put me here, help me. I'll take anybody's help. So we're really not trying to be critical. We're just trying to, you know.
And I think the
Get us on the
lens
same-
that you bring and the questions that you ask, right, push us further ahead.
Yes.
It's perfect. That's the way it should work.
All right, just so people know we're not.
Yeah, my comment to her, she was talking was, it's kind of a backdrop to what Dr. Rodriguez said earlier. Good, it's not great, and I know you have that drive to be great. So when we look down, why aren't we great? We're doing all the great things, but there's these pockets that you may have to be out of the box to fix. So a lot of times that's a big part of where we
Point
are.
out too that our community hasn't given Ms. Blue her resources either. I mean, she's an overcrowded school as well. So to be performing as well as you are, to be commended like often and loudly, because we fail as a community to give you all the resources you need to be effective too. It's not just, the state, help us, but we need to get, you know, bodies in the voting booth, give us some money and get some space here for people to spread out.
A
Any,
lot of politics there.
Sorry.
That's
That's what I said.
I'll tell you a comment, yes, I know, I'll tell you a comment that an educated professor said to me early in my education career. We are where we are, and we got what we got. And that's where we work from there.
That's right.
well, this is always so enlightening and so appreciate everybody's opinions and thoughts and ideas. And as I've spoken to we built a small community group this morning, about 20 people. And I'm just so hopeful. I am so hopeful. And we're very excited, so. Any last?
No, this is our next meeting.
Yeah, let's do that. Do you have a suggestion?
Do you want to keep it on your same tentatively or on the third Wednesday, which would be September 18th?
I will be on my way to Italy that week.
Okay.
So I won't be here, but you certainly can have it done.
Well, we don't move it, so you should be here.
Well,
We can go with you to Italy.
Yeah, it
We'll just say.
okay.
it's going further and further away every time.
Can I just let you all know, we may have had other parents that were interested in joining this meeting, and when the staff in the front left, they did not leave the door open. Jody has actually been out there. So I just wanted to let you know, there could have been others that came and thought, oh, it's not here, and left, because they didn't have my number to say, let me in.
I put a note myself about that earlier, so as soon as you tell me what the meetings are, I'll be at that front door as soon as we
I
say.
posted, I know we had the same
I
problem.
will remind the staff, I mean, all I could do is remind them.
Well, there's also not even posted on the door that it's happening, and it should be.
I'm
And
here
the
in the
principal
school.
here will do that.
Oh, I know, she's amazing, yeah, no,
She's
I know,
new.
and I know it's the first week and all
Right.
that, but
Yeah,
parents, there
it
are,
is the first week.
this meeting in general, I know a lot of parents do want to participate, so.
All right, I will, I'll tell you as soon as you tell me that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do,
Wait.
Oh, the 11th is operations.
What time of day?
The operations meet at 4:30 at the district office on the 11th. That's their regular standing date.
What's the next one?
and you're
What
going
about the
to,
7th?
how about?
So do you want to do it on Tuesday the 10th?
I do that.
Okay.
So Tuesday the 10th?
Is there anything else going on?
There's nothing
Do you
scheduled.
want to do it?
I know.
So,
Let's go back to the district.
yes, ma'am.
We're going to do North Broad, will be the district office. We'll do the 10th at the
All right.
district office.
All right.
Okay, district office.
Yes, on the 10th.
On the 10th, that's 4:30?
4:30.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And we're going to confer about the topic. There are a couple, we've had quite a queue, and so we just need to prioritize that queue.
Can I make a suggestion?
Bill, please.
Since the MOUs are due on if they would be due on the 17th, at the board meeting on the 17th, do you want them to bring it back to the committee on the 10th before the board meeting? Or do you just want to wait for the full board on the 17th?
That's
So
so
I don't think that,
close.
yeah, I think what she's working on is the format, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's the format. I don't think they may not have that.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, no, that's a good thought though,
Okay.
but I think that we need a little more time.
All right.
And I would be okay with doing that.
At the full board?
At the full
And
board.
not coming back to the committee?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and we can all share, that what we have done thus far. Okay, thanks for thinking about that though. Okay, a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
All in favor? Yes. All right, thank you so much, everybody. Greatly appreciate everybody's input.